Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to my channel, Mosaic Maria. My name is Maria. Thank you for being here. Okay, so the other day, yesterday exactly, I put forth a video that I threw into question, could DID, or multiple personality, what it used to be called, or dissociative identity disorder, ever be thought of as a functional neurological disorder? Could it be? Could it be that we one day hear that I'm watching my cat in the background. I don't know what he's going for, but hang on one second. Justin, what are you doing? He's gonna jump my, oh my gosh. You are not gonna do that. He's gonna go up there. Woo! Justin busted on the camera. I just saw how he was going to do it. He was going to go on the dresser and jump up onto my other dresser and get on my knitting and crochet stuff. I have to think of something better to do, like when I leave the house, where to put my stuff. Okay. He hijacked my video. All right, so the question was, can we think of DID as an experience that is functional for us if we've been diagnosed with DID or multiple personality when it was called that? And then I just want to look at a few cases of what the science-minded experts do when a whole public goes into a panic during pandemics, during wartime, during times that are problematic, and things are happening that they can't explain. What the science-minded people do as science evolves until they figure out what it is, because they really don't know. They find a new name for it. Okay, so let's start with, and I'm going to do this quick because I got to pick this book up. I used to own this book, but I got rid of it. But I picked it up at a library, and it's really musty. It must have had water damage, so I don't want to start a coughing fit. This book is called Medical Muses: Hysteria in the 19th Century in Paris. It talks about Dr. Jean-Martin Chicot, the great Salpêtrière Hospital, which was mostly an asylum back then, and where Dr. Jean-Martin Chicot, a neurologist psychiatrist, was treating women on a unit that were considered celebratory patients. Now, I almost don't want to do this, but I got to show you because there's some great still photos that were taken of the patients. This is supposed to be a woman that she thought herself to be a nun. Okay. Genevieve was her name. And you get to read about all these different patients and how they came. And they were of middle class, kind of like they had the where's Augustine? She's really interesting. Augustine. They would have been sent to a convent or they would have been sent to a convent. Like they had the kind of family that would have put them in a faraway country home or whatever. They had the money, which was so strange because they were in a madhouse that the impoverished women that were thought to be feeble-minded and just plain straight out mad were sent to also. But some of these, they had the money for true psychoanalysis, right? I don't want to trigger anybody, but here's the kind of neurological things they did. And what they saw was a lot of movement disorders and contortions and spiritual posing, turning into like little children, the positioning of their hands, acting out and behaving as they were told to, going on at the Great Salpêtrière Hospital. Okay. So any of these things could be looked at as, I mean, it just looks like photos now, but they applied meaning to it. Like this one is talking to visions that aren't there. On here is actually musing with fairies and things. Um, where is the other one? Very polite. These are different personas of a person. They would give them different outfits and dress them up. Justin, leave the bee alone. Oh, it's a hornet. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so here we go. We got some interesting ones here. We're setting up for the photo shoot their reaction to being photographed. This is supposed to look like a weird contortion, like body movements that people would get into. But people could also get into these movements when they were experiencing what's called catonia or catonic positioning. So there you go. And it would look like, and then mostly found in like schizophrenia, where a person became catonic or they got into catonic positions. But we now know that a lot of people can get into these positions when they have movement disorders and they're not schizophrenic. So as science evolves, we learn more. And until then, science will keep applying meanings of what they know so far. Um, this lady here was probably one of the saddest cases. I can't remember. Genevieve. She had my attention. She was, to me, she was one of, she stayed there the longest. But Dr. Jean-Martin Chicot had these women on display for all the great doctors of the day, the great minds of the day, the poet laureates, the literature people. And I've done videos about this book before, but I think it's a hidden gem and you really got to get it to understand the history of multiple personality, of dissociative identity disorder, of things we can't explain, of panics like the Salem witch hunts, of I'm going to read to you one that's really interesting because I think it's a good example of how when somebody we decide is an expert gives us a name for it or a meaning, we accept it. But until we know what it is, we don't know what it is, and it keeps escalating and it grows. And media has a big role in this. So Dr. Jean-Martin Chicot treated these women. People came from all over the world that were rich enough, artists, poets, writers, photographers, holy archbishops, every great psychiatrist came, sat under Dr. Jean-Martin Chicot. Dr. Sigmund Freud said, what these women are doing is hysteria. It's hysteric. Okay, so the first thing that multiple personality was called was hysteria. And there can be seen times in culture and in different centuries where there were mass hysterias and things that just happened that couldn't be explained, and then growth of it when media got involved. Okay, so once everybody started coming to look at this show and tell that Dr. Jean-Martin Chicot was doing, the great mind said, we don't believe that. We believe these women are being manipulated, or there is a gain in it for them. They're getting something from it, whether it be more food, better clothes, more visitation, attention. They get to go out on the grounds more. Whatever it is, they're getting something from it. Sexual pleasure. It turned out later that there were doctors that were having um, relationships, sexual relationships with these women. So enough said right there. There was something really weird going on, and all of the scientific neurological community said, we're not buying it anymore. We're not buying this Dr. Jean-Martin Chicot charlatan. And Dr. Chicot knew that in his later years that these women were still on the floor. And they actually, as they stopped bringing people to come and look at these women, as the media fell away, they stopped performing. And when they stopped performing, he was very perplexed. Like, what, like he had all these people. He was a star. He was a star. Think of people like Dr. Colin Ross. No disrespect to Dr. Colin Ross. Think of Dr. Richard Pluft. Think of Dr. Bennett Braun. Dr. Putman. Think of all these doctors that are experted in multiple personality, dissociative identity disorder. Dr. Bethany, all of them. Think of all of them. Think of your people in the UK who are giving you little certificates saying, the Potters, saying you meet the criteria for DID before you're even assessed. Okay. All of this, okay? How big can it grow in our minds? How big can it grow in a community where people are looking for answers? How big can it grow when you're sitting with a doctor who believes you to be something? And this person here was actually believing they're being crucified. They're being persecuted. Take them out of here. Saintly. Saints. So everything from demon possession to weird things they couldn't figure out, right? Here's another very interesting thing. Can't find the page right now and I don't want to. Dr. John Martin Chicot diagrammed what he called the hysterogenic zones of the female body. But he went one step further. He said there are hysterogenic zones, spots on the hysterical body, charted by Dr. Chicot, would trigger or arrest an attack when they were pressed. Okay? In any medical investigation, the body becomes kind of a map. Diagnoses create new routes, and previously undistinguished areas are reclassified and given new significance. The female body was called the Dark Continent of the 19th century, and it was presented to doctors as uncharted territory. Why? Because they had a womb. They could do something men couldn't do. They could deliver a baby. They could carry a baby and deliver a baby. And this was a dark continent that men just didn't understand. Okay. And what he actually started doing was looking at these areas of the body as trigger points to either get an illicit response, and it could be sexual in nature or it could be painful, and how to stop. And he believed that only a hysteric, that would equal a person with multiple personality. A hysteric. Okay, let's look at the word hysteric. It means you're out of your mind. Okay, let's look at the word disassociation. Where do we go? Out of our mind. Okay, so there's reclassification and it's been going on forever. And it started way back here too. In America, in American culture, multiple personality, American culture, Ansel, the Passion of Ansel Bourne. This talks a lot about multiple personality and how it got its name. It actually started from the disintegration of personality. So like a personality. Then Dr. Morton Prince named his book The Disintegration of Personality. And from that, he came up with multiple personality. And from that, Dr. Cornelia Wilbur sat under Dr. Morton Prince and Sigmund Freud and all these people and came up with Sybil. Okay. Then we look at creating hysteria. This looks at the late 80s and early 90s where the cases in Northern America just ballooned. Why? The media was involved. Okay. So yesterday I started talking about the TikTok tickers, what I'm just going to call them, and the ladies of Leroy. So I live in Rochester, New York. Leroy is not too far from me. And about 2010-11, suddenly 12 young women, teenagers, who all kind of went to the same school district area and grew up in the same area, started to have neurological movement disorders and symptoms that made no sense. Just very abrupt overt symptoms, not covert, not something subtle or underlying, but very overt, disruptive to their family, them, their life, the whole everything. And the media caught wind of it, and the parents started to believe that maybe it was something in the water. Maybe it was something in the soil. Maybe it was something in the school. Maybe it was something around them. And the longer the parents didn't have an answer, the more the media brought attention to it, the more the women performed, the more people came looking, the more they performed. Okay. So, eventually Aaron Brockovich, of all people, decided, I'm going to come investigate the water. And they investigated everything. Like, what could it be? What could it be? And it was nothing. It was nothing but that the media kept talking about it and they didn't have an answer for it. Okay? So is the media powerful? Yes. Can it grow a thing? Can it manufacture a thing? Yes. Okay. Can it change our perception of our own reality? Yes. Does Sybil, the book Sybil, the movie, really matter? Yes. Does anything you put in your mind that experts are giving validity to and you consider an expert make it real? Yes. Okay. Some would argue with me, but I'll say yes for me. Okay. So the TikTok tickers got no answers from Aaron Brockovich. And what they found was that there was an influencer, I talked about this yesterday, on TikTok. Nothing wrong with TikTok, nothing wrong with showing awareness for a situation. But when you get a large following and teenagers are suggestible, or anybody is suggestible, when they're in a anxiety. Is my cat still in the room with me? Let me see. I'm checking to make sure he's not going up on the. Where are you, Dustin? There you go. Okay. Gotta check. When there's a problematic world, environment, situation going on, and anxiety and fear and no answers, will we reach for whatever somebody tells us makes sense? I will. Okay. So those are diagnosis driven people. They need to find out, but why? Why? Why does this hurt? Why? Why? Okay. Why am I behaving that way? But why? But why? But why? I was that kind of kid. I'm that kind of person. Let's get to the bottom of it. Why? Sometimes there is no answer to your why until later. Until later, you're in process. Science evolves, okay? But for people that are really antsy, like me, and like many people that are diagnosis driven, that maybe are getting flack from their family and being told, well, that's not real. I'm gonna bring up one more thing to validate this. If you had chronic fatigue syndrome or were told you had chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia back in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s, it was thought it was all in your head. You were just manufacturing this stuff. You were malingering, you were faking, you were just lazy. You just couldn't let the past go. Something was wrong. It was all in your head. And then they found out eventually it is all in our head. Our brain works differently. It's a valid condition. But that syndrome thing, and that women were getting it more than men, and that the men that were get it were considered worrywarts or anxious ridden men, it was completely unvalidated until it was. We can just look at the pandemic and how the CDC keeps changing the guidelines. Okay, so the CDC keeps changing the guidelines as the virus changes. That is how everything should be approached. And then really looked at what's significant and what's an insignificant finding. So I'm just going to tell you a couple things that happen through the centuries, like the TikTok tickers. So once it got media attention, these teenagers were really suffering. A person was just trying to show this is my life with Tourette's syndrome, which is a neurological movement disorder. and it can really be validated by tests, and it's usually more subtle than overt. And the main tell for the main scientists were all these people that were watching this TikTok channel are shouting the same phrase in German. That doesn't happen. That would be like if I had a tick and my tick was that every time I got upset or nervous, I said, "Oh, Shazam!" or "Bajiggity diggity doo." Bajiggity diggity doo, bajiggity diggity doo. Oh, Shazam! Shazam! Whoop, whoop, Shazam! Okay, I'm just making up something now. If you were watching me right now, if you repeated that and said, "Oh, Shazam!" I can't even remember what I just said. That's what I'm saying. These people were watching over and over again. They were tuning in. They were going to the show. The media was picking up on it. What's happening to these people? How are they getting this syndrome? What's happening? Okay. So it grew bigger. But they all started saying the same thing. You wouldn't all say the same thing. Sort of like having your favorite curse word. For me, I say when I want to say when I want to drop the F-bomb, I usually say fucksers or fucks you. I put an X on it. Or when I can't think of something, I want to say, oh, shyster shit or whatever, I'll say, oh, but jigger, oh, Jiminy Crickets or something like that. My grandmother used to, everything was my mom's mom. She would say, Jesus, Joseph, Mary. I mean, that was something a lot of women did, I think. It's easier than cursing. It was more acceptable. Or she'd say, I need that thingamajig. I need that doohickey, that thing. That was kind of her thing to say when she didn't know what to say. So this person that was on TikTok was saying the same thing, perseverating the same thing. That becomes a tick, something that's repetitive over and over again. All the TikTok tickers kept saying, Shazamity damity doobadib. What I thought when I started seeing some of these people on 60 Minutes, teenagers, oh my God, they've been watching Candy Crush too long. They had the music on. That's what I thought. I thought, you know how Nintendo, that's what a lot of them were doing. I was like, oh my God, they've been video gaming too much. No, they were watching one influencer too much. Was it the influencer's fault? No. That is a mind untamed that has problem around them, that needs answers, that gets some kind of gain out of it, not doing it deliberately. Now it's taken on a life of its own. Okay. That is what they're saying people do when they disassociate. They don't do it deliberately. There's functional disassociating and then there's non-functional. What the scientific minds are veering towards is dissociative identity disorder is functional. It's a functional neurologic disorder. And it is. Right? Just about everything that people can't understand that gets too much gets put under a functional neurological disorder. So what the great minds said to the TikTok tickers is you have a conversion disorder. Well, conversion, the parents weren't happy with that. The people that were suffering in their family was not happy. They were like, okay, we know Sigmund Freud said there's something psychological going on. It's painful. And we convert it to manifesting in our body. That's what a conversion disorder is. Sigmund Freud said, when a psychogenic, a pain in our mind, something traumatic, something painful, something we can't face, an anger, we want to tell somebody off, we want to explain, we're ashamed, we're grieving, whatever it is, it manifests in the body. We have converted our psychological pain into a physical manifestation. That's what Sigmund Freud said, and we've converted it, so it's a conversion disorder. Okay. He actually left the whole practice of neurology to just focus on why are people having these physical complaints. Other people came along in neurology and said, wait a minute, There are symptoms that people have that we can't put under any criteria. Person's got their eye hurts and their toe hurts. Their butt hurts and their shoulder hurts. They have lower back pain, but they get headaches. They have lower back pain, but they got stomach problems. Or they have an array of symptoms that doesn't fit anything. They don't have trigger points like chronic fatigue. For a long time, people just thought you were nuts if you had chronic fatigue, Epstein-Barr, or maybe you didn't reach the viral load of Epstein-Barr, so they just thought you were nuts. You're just chasing ghosts around your body. Okay. Um, the body will always manifest what pain is going on in our head that we put on a back burner and that we're not even willing to consciously deal with. So it is on a subconscious level. But when a person starts to get a gain from it, when their entire motive is to grow a business, grow a channel, become an influencer, get a following, become famous, that's when I put the whole thing into question. Are you really a victim? Are you really a survivor? Did you really have trauma? Really? Really? Because were you really just diagnosed DID like last year and you understand the whole thing and now you're going to tell us all about it? That's when I put it into question. All right. So I don't run around saying you're faking, you're faking, you're faking. I learned the hard way that's hard to do that. Instead what I look at it, and it's not right. What I look at is I go by my gut. I don't believe you. I look at what's the greater motive? What's the end result that you're getting here? Believe me, people that become impoverished on welfare, disability, or maybe get some food stamps or medical help and end up in therapy forever, that is not a benefit. That is subpar, just basic living. That is not a benefit. That is not a gain. But if a person has streams of income coming in because of their trauma and their sickness and their whatever, okay, so that's a whole nother video, which always happens when I make a video. I think of, oh yeah, I'm going to do a whole nother video on that. But haven't I been talking about that for years now? I have actually. But there's more of it going on the internet. Okay, so let's go back to a really cool example that I'm just going to call the windshield, the window we look through, the windshields of our mind, right? All right, I might name this video the windshields of our mind. So back in 1950, I think four, I'm going to look at it to be sure. Let me check. There's a great article on NPR I'm going to list to. 1954. There was nationwide weirdness. I'm going to read some of it to you. In 1954. And it started in Washington. And there was an epidemic in a small community of panicked residents who suspected everything from sand flea eggs to fallout from H-bombs and tests going on all around them. I'm sorry, every time I read this, it's kind of funny now. But in Washington, they were noticing these little pits in their windshields on their cars. Not on their houses, not on their rear view mirrors, not on their side mirrors, their back mirrors, nothing angular, just front windshields everywhere. We're starting to get these little dingies. And at this time, and it was April, March, it was always spring, it would go away in the summertime. So as the media picked up on this, it grew. It went from Washington to Ohio to all the way to Utah. All of a sudden, people all over were noticing something very insignificant, but they were looking at their windshields. They were looking at their windshields. And it was a panicked time because of the H-bomb testing that was going on around them. And Dwight Eisenhower was the president. And he brought in all kinds of researchers. What's making all these dents in the windows? what are all these dingy little things, and how much do they measure? Like 1/16 of an inch, and they're kind of blue and chips, like little chips in windshields, okay? Or kind of like an illusion, like it was an illusion. Like it looked foggy in a spot and then sharper in another spot. And these were very sound-minded, upstanding moral people. They weren't considered crazy or lunatics or drunks or feeble-minded, or, and I'm not making fun of drunks. I'm just saying they weren't considered to be on medication or drinking and drunk or high, or, and they were of sound mind. They, they checked these people out. They're like, okay, you're seeing dinghies on your windshields, and they brought out people to look at their car windows. Didn't matter where they parked in this small town, but now it was everywhere, and people hypothesized everything. Like, the insects are peeing acid rain. The insects are. Or a cloud is bursting from a high altitude with chemical damage, and it's damaging just the front windows, no other windows. Eventually, they brought all the great minds and scientists in, and it always went away in the summertime. And as the media picked up on this and the story grew and grew and grew, there was a mass hysteria. What's happening to our windshields? Until finally somebody said, you're looking at them. Windshields were not meant to be looked at. They were meant to be looked through. When they might find one or two insignificant chips in the reported windows, but by and large, when another set of eyes came along, it was the way in which you were looking at the windshield. A windshield, it's a different kind of glass. It's made to look through and get, all I can think of is I'll just call them my Emily Baker glasses. Right? I've always called them my Prince glasses. They're magnifying. You look at a magnifying glass, everything's closer, right? Closer, weird, kind of weird. Depends on where you look. Perception, location. Give me a headache. So I only put those on to get words up to me really close, right? Magnifying glass. I'm looking at labels and things, ingredients, calories, sodium count, that kind of thing. That actually calmed it down. The Leroy ladies, the parents were not happy with conversion disorder. So the doctors decided all of these Leroy ladies had was a conversion disorder, which was a functional neurological disorder. Now, under functional neurological disorder is everything from an illusion that you see, that you give a meaning to, that you're afraid of. So all you need for mass hysteria is fear, anxiety, problematic times, war, pandemic, isolation, too much time with your mind, okay? And one person to validate you, or a group. And it grows. And the media is what grows it. And they're not the enemy, they just start reporting it. People start hearing more of it. So the internet, what I'm saying, and what I said yesterday is, can the internet make us sick? Yes. Can the news make us sick? TV news? Yes. Can the source of our news make us sick? Yes. Can we get self-radicalized on the internet? Yes. Can you come up with an illness that you really don't have on the internet? Yes. Okay. Salem witch hunts in the 18th century were the greatest example of mass hysteria. And then in the 80s and 90s, again, mass hysteria, creation of tons of people with multiple personality disorder. And Now it's called dissociative identity disorder. Everything from a stomach ache to hysterical blindness to a limb that is paralytic and you can't move to anything a person feels is a deficit in their body. Can fall under somatoform illness because it's how the person perceives it, how much they focus on it. So right now, if I got a pain in my arm, that pain can grow to be a heart attack if it's my left arm. I can look at it and keep focusing on it, keep going to doctors and being like, my arm hurts, my arm hurts, my arm hurts, and then my chest hurts, and then I can't breathe right, and then it can grow into. That is not hypochondria. That is a somatoform illness. You're over focusing on it. You have no answer. Until you get an answer, it's just going to keep growing in your mind, in my mind. Conversion is when you have psychological stuff going on that you haven't dealt with, pains from your past, or things you're dealing with every day that maybe you're living with somebody you can't stand, but you can't tell them off. Maybe you've had to deal with family members that you're sorry you ever let them in your life. I have that situation in my life. I have a subset of family members that were very important to me. They are nothing to me now. Right now, they're nothing. They've been nothing for almost 3 years. And I'm very sorry I ever let them into my hemisphere and my children's hemisphere. I'm very sorry. And they are nothing to me. I was going to remain sick until I admitted that to myself. Like maybe someday I'll be thankful for them, but right now I'm not. And it's okay to say that. If I kept that in, I would keep manifesting sickness and I would keep overeating, comforting myself. So what am I saying about DID, mass hysteria, somatoform, the TikTok tickers? It all comes from a psychogenic pain, something we haven't dealt with, or media that makes it something that we agree is okay. The TikTok ticker said, we don't like conversion disorder. So they renamed it functional neurologic disorder. And any symptom under the sun can go under that. Constipation, diarrhea, IBS, never mind IBS. You got a neurological functional disorder. Functional neurological disorder. Okay. You get all creepy in your stomach gets all creepy and cringy and weird after you eat some food. You don't have a sensitivity. They can't find a sensitivity. You don't actually have a gluten. You don't actually have a gluten intolerance. You're like right on the borderline. You really don't have a gluten intolerance. I mean, they'll tell you you do if it makes you happy. You really have that is your choice. You have decided that is what's making me sick. With DID, do we decide what's making us disassociate? What's making, what made the trauma? What made the problem? Have we already decided? Yeah, we have. Yeah, I did for years. Now, my doctor didn't lead me into performing or becoming at all, but he sure as hell didn't put a stop on it either. Okay? Was I doing it subconsciously? Yes. Was it serving a function? Yes. And I just want to say on the onset, I love my family that I'm talking about. This is an example. There are regrets. There is anger. There is seething anger, and behind that anger is pain and hurt, betrayal, and a whole lot of regret. And why did I do that? Why did I think they knew more than me? Why did I not trust myself? So we're living in times that are very unsettled right now, and it's very easy to look to the media for answers, the CDC for guidelines, other people on the internet because we're living on screen. Isolation is not good for people. Zoom meetings and Zoom everything, and it's great to have communities on Instagram. It's great to have communities on Facebook. It's great to have like communities, but when we start having like chronic fatigue, like Graves' disease. Oh my God, I signed up for Graves' disease on one of these social media things. Every time somebody takes a first dose of something or goes for a treatment or whatever, everybody's like, did this happen to you? Because it happened to me. And now you got a whole thread going, yeah, that happened to me too. Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, that happened to me too. Yeah, don't do that. That is how it's like in DID land, guys. It is. The DID community has become, do your littles do this? My littles do that. Are we just as big as the TikTok tickers? You bet we are. You bet we are. So I'm asking everyone that has been diagnosed with DID, are you ready to pick up the DSM one day and find it's not a disorder? It's a functional neurological disorder. It's an illusion. You are looking at a thing and applying meaning. You weren't meant to look at all that, but you are, and you're applying meaning to it and giving it a life of its own. Were we just meant to look through the windshield and not at the windshield? With everything. So there was the Salem witch hunts, mass hysteria. There was the wingy dingy weird windshields. There was a swine flu in, I believe, in China, where men were being told their penises. Can I say that on YouTube? I don't see why not. They say it on TV when they're selling Viagra and penile dysfunction and everything. Okay, so penis. Men believed their penises were going to fall off if they got the swine flu. They showed up in hospitals everywhere in Singapore and China with symptoms of the swine flu, but they didn't have the swine flu because they were fearing their penises would fall off. The mind is a powerful thing. That's all I'm saying. And some of the best books you can read. And it's underrated as far as I'm concerned. And Asti Hustafet, she is wonderful. She has PhD in French literature from the New York University. She has worked as an editor and translator and lives in New York City. Let me just read you a quick overview. In 1870s, three women, Blanche, Augustine, and Genevieve, found themselves in the hysteria ward. That would be the MPD-DID ward of today. Of the Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris under the direction of the prominent neurologist, Dr. Jean-Martin Charcot. Their illnesses came to define the era, and in turn they became medical celebrities every week. Eager crowds arrived at the hospital to observe their symptoms. They were photographed, sculpted, painted, and transformed into characters in novels. The remarkable story of their lives as patients in the clinic is a strange amalgam. I don't know what that means. I gotta look it up. Of intimate details and public exposure, science and religion, medicine and occult, hypnotism, love, and theater. But who were Blanche, Augustine, and Genevieve? What role did they play in their own peculiar form of stardom? These are the questions that Asti Hustafed seeks to answer in the impressive work Hysteria, with its dramatic seizures, hallucinations, reenactments of past traumas. Have you been triggered and you're reenacting your trauma? Are you post-trauma? That's what these women were. Reenacting their trauma. Okay. Maybe an illness of the past, but the notions of femininity that lie behind and offer insights into the disorders of the present, from anorexia to depression. It's all there. From anything that the media romances, brings awareness to, grows. And people have to realize their part in it. And I realize my part in it becoming more than MPD DID. And it wasn't until I realized that I knew how to integrate. Okay? Personal accountability, and taming those fears, the unknown, the wild, the what if, the not having an answer. It's just there. Insignificant finding, it means something, but it doesn't mean anything now. We can't fit it into a criteria, whatever, that kind of thing. This book here looks at more of a cultural account, how it looks at all the analysis forward, and when we give magic meaning, and what we consider illusions, delusions, and I would have to say more of a sociological, genetic kind of look, cultural. What we think stream of conscious is. It's a very interesting read because it looks at what all the early scientists really thought multiple personality was. And this here just a quick blurb. In 1989, Elizabeth Carlson in Minneapolis, a Minneapolis housewife, was sent to a psychotherapist for help with depression. Before long, the therapist suggested to her that perhaps her problem was actually multiple personality disorder. This book is so close to my heart. A condition that, according to the experts, quote unquote, was connected to childhood abuse. With coaching from the therapist and under heavy medication, Carlson soon came up with more than 25 personalities. I could go on. And during that time, I won't. The numbers grew. The numbers grew. When you see a system group out there and their numbers are growing, 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 and they're integrating and they're fusing and then they're growing again. So it looks at a phenomenon that really grew out of mass hysteria, and doctors, what? Looking for it. Because what we look for, we will find. On my email for my Gmail, I have what's called part of my Mosaic Creed, and one of the Mosaic Creeds to getting better. And I named the system group of my personality in therapy the mosaics, because I love to do mosaics and collages. And I thought of myself as many parts that made one big body. And they all went together, they all fit together, but they all serve different purpose or whatever, right? We are all mosaics. We have our days we're sharp, we're pointed, we're to the point, we're curt, we're rough, we're soft, we are full of texture and volume and character, and then we're dull. We have all these aspects in our personality. What I wrote in my email, and it's still there, I think you can put little quotes there at the end of your email. I wrote, open your eyes. What you're looking for is looking for you. It's right in front of you. What you're looking for, you will see. It's right there. Look, it's right there saying, hello, here I am. I get very interested in people that have rare disorders and they want them validified. They have an ache, they have a pain, they want a diagnosis. The ICD-9, 10, 11, the DSM, original, 2, 3, 4, 5, revised again. They're guidelines. They explain a lot of psychological features and of medical features, physical features for the APA and psychological for the APA. And the NIH has their statistical manuals now. But they mostly just give the permission for insurance to treat and how to treat and what medication to give and how long a person can stay in treatment and what works and what doesn't. So it's a good tool, but it's not the Bible. It's not the end all. So again, I'm going to ask before I go. There are doctors out there that are thinking that disassociating is a functional experience. How would it change your life if a neurologist told you, yeah, you may have been diagnosed with multiple personality, or it's called DID now, but it really is a functional neurologic disorder. Okay, what is that? It's something you need in your life for a time. It's working for you. When you don't need it anymore, it will stop working and you'll be able to get rid of it. Okay, that's all I'm going to say for today. Take care, everyone, and just be careful what we're allowing ourselves to be influenced by, whether that's political news, spiritual news. It's who we deem to be an expert in our life and what we say is true. I have so many problems about speaking our truth because sometimes our truth is not the reality. It's not true. So, having said all that, thank you for hanging in with me. I'm going to be talking more about integration, how I integrated. The integration is held now for 3 years, and I'm actually more. Some people would think you're a whole different person than you were before, but I'm not talking about the same things. I just talk about it a little differently now. How after 36 years after a diagnosis, how I look at DID MPD now. I look at it as one of many of the undefined functional neurological disorders. Doesn't mean anything because there are people that have functional neurological disorders that give them diarrhea, make them constipated, give them a crampy stomach, give them a rash, give them a headache, a migraine, make them sleepy, they can't get up, give them aches and pains. So I'm in good company. Okay? So are you. So you are not broken. It's working for you. But like these ladies had to ask, what part do I play in my weird illness? We have to ask that. What part do we play? Okay, I'm going to go look at some ingredients on stuff. And my next video is going to be about stuff I stored up for in the pandemic that I never generally ate. Like I never ate canned goods. And how I think I gained weight. But I'm going to take it off. All right. Talk to you later. Thanks for dropping in. Bye-bye.